The election season is here, and this is a big year in New Jersey. In addition to the race for governor, every seat in the state legislature and Assembly and Senate are up, and with so many politicians looking to get your attention, some are getting really creative. My guest today is Republican Assemblyman Jon Bramnick, Republican Assembly leader, and he is also a candidate for state Senate in the 21st District. Assemblyman, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you, Laura.
All right, so we've got the race for governor. You are running for state Senate, and last week we played an ad, and I've got to play it again to set the tone. Let's take a look. I think it's going to bring a smile to many viewers' faces.
He is fast.
He's quick.
He's unbelievable.
Jon Bramnick, the fastest return call in government.
Of course I can help.
I called Jon Bramnick. He picked up on the first ring.
Happy to help.
Took care of everything.
I took care of it.
We thought my husband might have contracted COVID, so I called Jon, and he answered on the first ring and told us everything we needed to know.
Happy to help.
He was on vacation with his family. He still picked up on the first ring.
Thanks for calling.
I'm a Democrat. He still helped me, and that's the truth.
My pleasure. Happy to help.
Bramnick, Munoz, Matsakudis. No one's faster at returning your calls.
Never seen anything like it.
Thanks for calling.
Okay, now as a reporter, it's my job to fact check and to make sure that commercials are put to the truth test. So last week, I texted, I didn't call, I texted, and within a minute, you returned it and picked up and called. So you're putting your money where your mouth is.
You know who doesn't like that? My wife. So we go out for dinner, and she goes like this. And I got to take my phone out. But just like they have in like those detective movies, I have a backup phone. I keep it down on my ankle. So the other day went out for dinner, and she took that phone away, but I have my backup just in case, you know what I'm saying? So she finally gave up, and she said, just answer the phone. You're going to do it anyway. You know, the bottom line is it's really simple. Like sometimes you can't do big stuff, but you can always return a call, and you can always try to help people with little stuff. And to be honest with you, that's what I like the best, because the big stuff's hard to do.
Right. And I think that is a frustration with so many people. They're watching the political season. They're involved. They're interested. They want to know what's happening, but it gets bogged down, and they're fighting, or they're in an argument that is just going around in the same circle. And you chose in this ad anyway to not talk about issues. You're not talking about cost of living. You're not talking about quality of life, taxes. You're not talking about COVID. So why did you just decide to take this path?
Well, in a certain way, I am. Because when people call you and ask you about the taxes, they don't always call because they have a personal problem. They call because they have an idea, or they're concerned about something in the state of New Jersey, and you can explain why certain legislation didn't get done or why the property taxes are high. Being accessible is actually responding to all of those issues. And you can explain to people why they may be unhappy in terms of what's happening in New Jersey state government.
So can you tell us a little bit about what it is? Well, you've been in the state assembly for a number of years. You're looking to move to the Senate. Tom Kean Jr. is not running for re-election in the legislature, so that's the seat that you are going to. This is a gubernatorial election, and right now, seems that what's coming back up on the radar is COVID. The governor, his executive orders that he put into place that some say really cut the legislature out of the process. So if you have a very blue state, the legislature is Democrat, governor's office is Democrat, how effective can you be if the governor's office and legislature stays in Democratic hands?
Well, you can be very effective because without balance in the legislature, without somebody who's the watchdog pointing out what the majority is doing, it can get a lot worse. So when you see an all-Democratic legislature and a Democratic governor, you really want a voice on the Republican side, actually a Republican voice that in my judgment, is moderate, but very conservative when it comes to fiscal issues. So by eliminating any opposition, which they would like to do, the balance moves farther to the left. A perfect example is, but for myself and others calling out the governor on signing a bill that prohibited from police officers from telling parents if their kids were caught with marijuana or with beer, and it could be a 13-year-old child, that law would be in effect today. So sometimes when the Democrats move too far to the left, you want to vote for a Republican, even if you're not a Republican, maybe even if you're a Democrat. You want balance in the legislature. And Laura, you know, because you've been monitoring this stuff for a long time, extremism is not what most people want.
Right. And especially New Jersey, it is more of a moderate state. They call it a very much a blue state. So what are the issues? What do you see the issues? Because COVID, that really dominates the headline, that dominates the narrative. And it is not to diminish the significance and the impact of the pandemic, but life is going on, and people want to be able to pay their bills, live in their homes, know that, well, what I can retire in my home. And New Jersey is not an affordable state. You know, I'm in Florida visiting my family, my parents, but there are a lot of people that are leaving New Jersey, not just for vacation, but leaving it because it's not affordable anymore. So what can you do? What would you like to do? You know, what have you done?
Sure. Well, let's first go back to the COVID issue. There were no public hearings. These things were done without legislative hearings, without hearings. That the governor had no hearings. He just signed executive orders. That was my biggest concern. Why would you not hear from the public? So that was the biggest mistake. I'm not criticizing every decision the governor's made, but not having hearings is terrible. Now, let's go back to some of my ideas. You know, you mentioned Florida. Florida has what's called a Homestead Act. Now, I actually have that bill in New Jersey. What that would do is it would keep your property taxes level with slight increase until you sold the house. Now, think about this. You got senior citizens who have a house. They're paying, let's say, $10,000 in property taxes. Those property taxes should be stable until the next generation buys it. When you have two incomes where they can afford more property taxes, then it goes up to market value. Florida's done that really well. I have that bill. So far, the bill's not moving. We call that a Dracula bill. It hasn't seen the light of day. So that's one of many ideas that I think this state needs. Clearly, when we got billions of dollars of extra money, whether that be extra revenues or federal money, we started to spend it immediately. Like, you know, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but my parents always said, you know, you always want to save money because you never know what's down the road. So I think there's some big spenders down there, and that's the voice that I bring to the legislature.
People, when it comes to property taxes, New Jersey's are so high because education is funded at the local level. We have more school districts than there are municipalities, and parents are getting more and more upset at what is or perhaps is not going on in the classroom. And coming up to the fall, we do not know where the pandemic is going to take us. We don't know if students are going to have to be in masks, if they're going to have to go back to remote learning. But many parents are pulling their students out. They're either opting to homeschool or to pay for private school, and they're already paying so much in property taxes. Again, it's not affordable. So what can you say to those parents who are saying, you know, I moved to this town because I like the quality of life, but if I can't live here and if I can't afford to even retire here, what do you have to say to them? Because parents are having to make some very, very difficult decisions right now when it comes to schooling and already paying an outrageous amount of money to send your kids to public school through your property taxes.
You know, government and government decisions and decisions in life are always a balance. My balance on this issue is get the kids back in school. Take whatever precautions you have. But this remote learning thing, it's time to get the kids back in school. Do it as safely as possible. But the consequences of keeping kids out of school for a year or longer, I think, is extremely damaging. So, you know, let's get them back in school, and let's protect everybody in the school as well. And we have to monitor what happens with COVID. But I think it's time to get back to in-person learning.
New Jersey's teachers union is one of the most powerful in the country, and it's certainly one of the most powerful industry lobbies in the state of New Jersey. Your boots on the ground, you know what's happening. What are you hearing? Are the teachers ready to go back in the classroom, or are you concerned that because there are potentials for vaccine mandates and masks back in the school, that the teachers union might say, you know what, we don't want to put our members through that. We don't want to force our teachers to get vaccines. So maybe we're going to continue to do remote learning, or perhaps what are they saying?
I think the teachers want to get back in the classroom as well. These teachers, didn't buy into this profession because they wanted to be on some computer and not be with the kids. And I think with oversight by medical professionals, you can keep the teachers safe. The threat to children is normally pretty low. The threat to teachers may be higher. So I think you can put that teacher in the classroom and still protect the teacher. And I think that's what teachers want. I don't think they enjoy talking to a computer screen. I don't think they looked at their life as a teacher talking to kids on a computer without that, in-person interaction. So I think the teachers union would be, everyone's got to be reasonable here, but you got to get the kids back in the classroom and protect the teachers. It can all be done. I have no doubt about that.
Are you concerned that they're going to have to, the CDC might, elected officials might put mask mandates back into place? They might cap how many people can be in a space, not only affecting education, but we're talking about our small businesses. People are just getting back and into their restaurants, and people barely survived. And again, the variant is on the rise, and businesses barely made it through the first time. So what are your thoughts, and what can you say to the business community, those struggling, saying, you know what, we cannot deal with any more, let us run our business, let the chips fall where they may. We're going to take the precautions we need to, or we may not be able to survive this.
I'm going to quote actually what I heard Governor Murphy saying, and he's obviously been making these decisions by himself. He said there's no appetite for a mask mandate. I'm going to tell you, one thing government can't do, which is the worst thing for government, is to mandate something that the people won't follow. In law school, I learned you can't make a singer sing. There's an old case like that. You're not going to be able to make people do things at some point in time. And I think you heard what the governor said, CDC, or should I say what the governor said? He said he's strongly recommending masks. I'm good with that. Yeah, fine. Strongly recommend it. I don't think, unless we have a complete meltdown, there's a crisis and there's no more beds in hospitals, I don't think any government official is going down that path, because I don't think the public can tolerate it. And people want to wear masks, and I respect them, wear a mask. But I don't think government's going down that road unless we hit some very critical time in the COVID situation.
So those who work for state government in New Jersey, because we're seeing it in Washington that, and some businesses are saying, you know what, we are going to mandate, we are requiring that you must get the vaccine in order to return to work, or provide proof by getting tests. What do you think about that? Because you hit on something there, is you can pass all the laws that you want, but you really can't control morality. You can't, control how people think and what they want to do. They can break laws like that. But what are your thoughts about that becoming a reality? Because at the federal level, you are seeing some, you're going to have to get this if you want to return to the office. And for whatever reason, people don't want to, and don't they have that right to say, I don't want you telling me what I can and cannot do?
Well, unfortunately, we've been through this with many vaccines. Certain kids can't go to school unless they have certain vaccines. It's just the way the law is. I don't have any problem with certain private businesses making a decision as to a mandate. That's been happening on for years. I don't think government should say everyone in the state of New Jersey should take the vaccine. I mean, though I support the vaccine, but I think that if you work for the government and you're exposing other people and you don't have a legitimate medical reason not to have it. And look, the other thing is doctors could exempt you from this for a good medical reason, right? And there are people who can't take it. Otherwise, the courts have said over and over again, you can mandate the vaccine. So, and that's what the law is. And I don't think the law is going to change. And once the law says you can do that, government's going to do it. And so our private industry is going to do it. So, I mean, as I said, this is a fine line between government requiring stuff and the effects of not having the vaccine. I know people now seriously who are seriously ill because they didn't get the vaccine. So I'm a vaccine proponent.
All right. Well, I want you to stick around. We're going to take a break because we want to go beyond talking about COVID and some other quality of life issues in New Jersey and the race for governor, as well as all the legislature up for re-election. So stay with us as New Jersey politics continue. My guest today is Assemblyman Jon Bramnick.
2020 felt like a dark tunnel, and while 2020 is over, the impact is not. The pandemic affected both our physical and mental health.
We started the Cody Fund for Mental Health to change lives, so we want you to know about NJ211.
It's a referral service for anyone in crisis, even children.
I am living proof that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
And it's not a train, it's help. It's NJ211.
The American Lung Association invites you to join us outside in 2021 for our Fight for Air Climb events. Now more than ever, we need you in the fight for clean air and healthy lungs. Let's go outside and climb, because every step counts. Visit us at lung.org.
Thanks for staying with New Jersey Politics. I'm Laura Jones, and my guest today is Assemblyman Jon Bramnick, who represents the 21st Legislative District in New Jersey, which takes in parts of Union, Morris, and Somerset counties. He's running for state senate. That seat is being vacated by State Senator Tom Kean Jr., whose father is former Governor Tom Kean. So, Assemblyman, we've been talking a little bit about the pandemic, COVID, and those issues, but there's so many other things going on in the state as far as affordability. Taxes are sky high, quality of life issues. So why have you decided to not run, to go from to go from the Assembly to the Senate?
Well, that's a pretty good question. When Tom Kean Jr. decided that he would, I think he's running for Congress, or he is, in District 7. He basically said he was leaving, so it was either myself or Nancy Munoz who would try to run for the Senate seat, and we have Michelle Matsakudis to run for my seat. It's a different house. I've been the Republican leader for almost a decade. Maybe people, it's time for a change, putting a new leader in the Assembly. It was just the appropriate time based on Tom moving ahead. Otherwise, I would have been happy to stay in the Assembly. I think being part of the legislative branch is fine. The Senate's fine. Senators have a little bit of an attitude, so hopefully I won't develop that attitude. They walk by the hall and they go, "Hello, Assemblyman." I said, "Hello, Senator." Yeah, but I'm not sure. They call it the upper house. I never liked that. So I was in the lower house. I think they're the same houses. They're at the same location. Anyway.
Well, and
as I said,
people,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. Well, people who may not cover or be as involved in covering state politics, a political junkie like I am, well, what's the difference between the Senate and Assembly, Senate at the national level, Senate, the House? But being a Republican in New Jersey, you have to, in a state that's so blue, so much Democratic control, you've got to be able to work on both sides, yet, still be able to represent your constituents. So if you were to win and the Democrats hold on to control, can you talk a little bit about your experience and why you think you can be effective in the upper house, in the Senate?
Well, I think it's simple. I think you need a voice to make sure that you call out the majority when they go too far. I gave one example of that before. There are bad bills that come up, and because it is a blue state, sometimes they just go to an extreme. My job is to call out, bad legislation, put in good legislation, and be a voice of reason. Once again, if you have too many Democrats and you have a Democratic governor, they move so far to the left, it doesn't really represent the majority of people in New Jersey. They may have the option to do that. My job is to try to be, to some degree, a voice of moderation in Trenton and stop really bad stuff from happening. I think that people don't realize why you want split government. If you have a balance between Democrats and Republicans, you have compromise. When you have compromise, you have a middle solution. When you have a middle solution, it's normally the good solution and the reasonable solution. When you have either party going too far to their left or right, you, in my judgment, you have a bad result. And people get mad at me because I'm a Republican. They say, don't you want all Republicans? I said, well, to be honest with you, to me, I like balance, and then you have good results. Like a mom and a dad are talking about a problem and everyone compromises. All of a sudden, if you talk about it, you get a decent solution. You don't want extremists in government. I can tell you that, in either side of the aisle.
Yeah, that's a great analogy about having, mom and dad. Yet a lot of times what seems to dominate or get a hold of the microphone are sometimes the extreme sides on both ends, whether it's the extreme Republican or Democratic side. And that voice will get out there. And that's what often gets into people's heads, whether it's about vaccines, whether it's about what's being taught in our classrooms, what have you. So how do you plan on trying to block that out and truly focus on what it is you want to do? Because people, when they run for office, a lot of times, and you've been in office, but they want to be able to appeal to both sides. But sometimes when you get in, you realize, I can't really do a lot. I might have ideas, but if I don't have other people who are going to agree with me and those on the other side who are going to listen, not a lot is going to get done. Yet you sometimes get hammered for taking certain stands by following what you either said you were going to run on, or what the people you represent are asking for. That politics, it seems more than ever, is driving the narrative, and you can't really get to discussing substantive issues.
Well, you raise a good point. I'm going to give you a couple examples. All due respect to my friends in the media, if you're kind of a moderate and your solutions are somewhere in the middle, you won't get any time. I'm going to give you an example. I used to go on all the cable stations, Fox, MSNBC, CNN. And the person who used to get me on the shows go like this: you're not going to go on any more shows. So why not? Well, because you're not passionate on either side. You're not way to the left or way to the right. Look, when people turn on the TV, they want to see somebody going like this: no one should ever take the vaccine. It's ridiculous. Other side say everybody should take the vaccine, right? They don't put the person on who's reasonable in the middle, right? They don't put the person on who says, well, sometimes Trump does some good things. Sometimes he acts crazy. I don't like it. They put somebody and go, they're 100% Trumper, or they're 100% against the Trumper. I mean, I'm not a big Trumper myself. As you know, they ran against me last time. But my point is, the person who's moderate, reasonable, makes sense, doesn't make news. They didn't want me on TV because they go like this: he's not crazy enough. They want the crazies.
Right. I tell you what, you will always have a place on my show because we share the same birthday.
Yeah,
so no matter what's going on,
the ratings are going to go down because I'm not crazy. Go like this. I'm not watching Laura Jones show. It's really boring. You got the guy Bramnick. He's kind of in the middle. He's riding the fence. It's too boring. But you're right, February 24th. But since you're a lot younger than I am, it's hard to remember when young people have my birthday.
Well, I tell you what, you always have a place on my show, and we can always have Take on February 24th. So, Jon Bramnick, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, and we appreciate all of your insights, and hope to have you back again.
Thank you, Laura. Have a great day.
You too. And we thank all of you for watching New Jersey Politics. I'm Laura Jones. Make sure you can follow us online on social media at njonair.com, and we will see you next time.